Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a snack of sources, some classic texts, some modern research, and really drilling down into the heart of sociology.
We are. And this isn't just about, abstract theory.
Not at all. It's about taking these huge theoretical debates and turning them into practical, analytical tools you can actually use.
That's the mission. We want to give you the conceptual scaffolding to move beyond just, seeing social change to actually understanding the mechanisms behind it.
Putting tools from thinkers like Robert Merton and Max Weber right into your hands.
Exactly. So you can clarify the complex dynamics that are happening all around you, basically in real time.
Okay, so let's jump in. We have to start where the field itself did, with this huge philosophical identity crisis. Is sociology a science?
The big question. And early on, the ambition was huge.
Right. We saw sources quoting Emile Durkheim, who boldly called sociology a science of collective representation. He wanted it to be as objective as, say, physics.
That was the positivist dream. Treat social facts as things you can measure objectively. But, well, that ideal has been largely rejected over the past century.
Why, though? What was the main pushback?
It comes from the interpretivists. Their core argument is that social reality is just. It's fundamentally different from natural reality.
You can't study people like you study atoms.
You can't, because people attach subjective meanings to what they do. You have to interpret that human experience, not just measure it from the outside.
And it's not just an internal debate, is it? I mean, even philosophers of science like Thomas Kuhn argue that all scientific knowledge is socially constructed to some degree.
That's a great point. It complicates the whole idea of pure objectivity in any field. But sociology doesn't just, give up on being rigorous.
Okay, so how does it defend itself?
On the grounds of verifiability and a kind of universality. While human action is complex, some principles can be universal. For example, the sources point to the link between unemployment and a lack of education.
That seems to hold true pretty much everywhere.
It does, unless some very specific local conditions intervene.
Wait, but saying unless conditions vary feels like a bit of a get-out-of-jail-free card, doesn't it? Physics says water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, period. Sociology seems to deal more in tendencies.
You've just nailed the core challenge. We're dealing with an open system human society, not a closed lab experiment. But the verifiability is key.
How do you verify it then?
You check the claims against real-world data. Across different countries, different cultures, you can observe that the proportion of unemployed people is consistently higher among the uneducated. That's a verifiable, observable fact that lets us build theory.
That open system versus closed system distinction is really useful. So what does this open systems approach, like Sayre's realism, actually mean in practice?
Well, in a closed system, you can isolate all the variables and predict the outcome with near certainty. You drop a ball, gravity works, you know where it lands.
Simple enough.
Society is an open system. There are countless variables: history, culture, individual choice, all interacting at once. So Sayre's view is that you can have a quantitative scientific sociology, but you have to accept that complexity.
So you're looking for underlying principles, not iron laws.
Exactly. You're looking for the causal mechanisms that operate consistently, even if the final outcomes look messy and different every time because of the context.
Okay, so sociology is a science that knows it's dealing with messy, unpredictable humans. That actually leads us perfectly from the philosophy to the practical tools. And this is where it gets really interesting, starting with Robert Merton.
Ah, Merton, the master of social comparison.
He starts with this idea of reference group theory.
And it's a concept that is immediately applicable to your own life. A reference group is just. It's the social benchmark you use to evaluate your own beliefs, your attitudes, your behaviors.
We do this all the time without even thinking about it.
Constantly. And we do it because we want social acceptance, a sense of belonging.
And he breaks it down into two main types, right? The primary and secondary groups.
Exactly. So first, you have your primary reference group. These are the people you have direct, frequent contact with. Your family, your close friends. They influence your day-to-day choices, like what you wear, based on direct feedback.
Then there's the other kind.
The secondary reference group. These are people you might never actually meet. Think of fashion icons, celebrities, a professional community you admire from afar. They set aspirational standards without any personal contact.
And we often start trying to meet those standards before we're even part of the group. That's what he calls anticipatory socialization.
It's a really powerful mechanism. You see high school students who start dressing and talking like college students, or junior employees who start mimicking the dress and communication style of senior management.
They're getting ready for the next
They're
stage.
preparing their social self, hoping to make the transition smoother and, increase their chances of being accepted when they finally get there.
But Merton saw the dark side of this too. The tension it creates when our goals clash with our reality.
Oh, absolutely. That's where his concept of the marginal man comes in. This is the person who's caught right in the middle of two conflicting groups or cultures.
Like a first-generation immigrant kid trying to balance the culture at home with the one at school.
A perfect example. Or think of a first-generation college student. They're trying to navigate the very privileged social world of an elite campus while also staying true to their working-class community back home.
That sounds incredibly stressful, a kind of constant identity conflict.
It is a huge source of tension. You feel like you don't fully belong anywhere. And this pressure to conform, it can lead to what Merton called dysfunctions.
A key one being groupthink.
Yes, exactly. The constant pressure to fit in limits creativity, it punishes independent thought, and it can even end up perpetuating discrimination against anyone who doesn't conform.
That makes so much sense. So if that's how we relate to groups, Merton also gives us this amazing tool for analyzing the systems we're in. The difference between manifest and latent functions.
This is one of the most useful ideas in all of sociology, I think. Manifest functions are the intended, recognized consequences of something.
The official reason.
The official reason, right? The manifest function of university is to educate people and give them degrees. Simple.
But the latent functions, that's where the really interesting unintended consequences are hiding.
That's where the sociological gold is. The latent function of that same university might be to act as a marriage market for the elite, or, more critically, to reinforce social inequality by giving the already privileged even more advantages.
And if you apply that to something like corruption, the analysis becomes razor sharp.
It really does. The manifest function of corruption is obvious. It gets wealth and power for the people doing it. It's profitable for them.
But the latent function is what rots the whole system.
Precisely. The latent function is the slow, systemic erosion of public trust. It undermines the very institutions, courts, police, government that are supposed to guarantee fairness. It makes sure that success is based on who you know, not what you know.
It's a foundational tool for critique. Now, before we move on, we have to touch on Max Weber's big contribution to the toolkit.
Of course, the ideal type. This is crucial for comparing anything in society. An ideal type isn't a moral goal. It's not ideal as in perfect.
It's more like a pure, abstract model, something that doesn't exist in reality but helps us measure it.
You've got it. Take Weber's own theory of bureaucracy. The ideal type of a bureaucracy is perfectly rational, efficient, and impersonal. No real government office or company is ever actually like that.
Never.
But by using that pure model as your measuring stick, you can look at a real-world DMV and see exactly where and why it's falling short. It gives you a neutral framework to analyze from.
That sets us up perfectly. Let's take these lenses, Merton's functions, Weber's types, Mead's interactionism, and apply them to some huge societal shifts. Let's start with the Industrial Revolution in Western Europe.
A massive transformation. The sources show it didn't just change how people worked, it completely rewired the family.
How so?
Before industrialization, the family was mainly a unit of production. You had large, extended families living in rural areas, all working together on a farm or in a home-based craft.
And then everyone moves to the city for factory jobs.
And that big productive unit just can't fit into a tiny urban apartment, so the family shrinks and becomes, instead, a unit of consumption.
And the nuclear family is born.
Right. And you get this new crucial separation between the home and the workplace, the public versus the private sphere. At first, this actually made gender roles even more rigid.
A man is the public breadwinner, the woman is the private caregiver.
Exactly. But that model didn't hold. Over time, new ideas about individualism and equality started to challenge that strict patriarchal structure, especially as more women entered the workforce.
And we can see how we learned those roles in the first place, using Mead's symbolic interactionism.
Yes, Mead said our sense of who we are is learned through social interaction in stages. It begins with the play stage.
This is when little kids are just imitating people around them.
Right, they're mimicking their significant others, like their parents. A little boy pretends to be his dad, a little girl pretends to be her mom. They're trying on these roles.
But the real rules come later, in the game stage.
Exactly. The game stage involves structured activities with rules, like team sports. Now, the child isn't just mimicking one person, they start to understand the expectations of the generalized other of society as a whole.
So in a soccer game, boys might be encouraged to be aggressive and competitive, while girls are taught to be more cooperative.
That's a classic example. That structured environment reinforces these broad societal gender expectations. It teaches us how to perform our gender according to the rules of the game.
Okay, let's bring this right up to the present. We're in another massive shift right now, driven by digital technology. The source is really focused on the complicated, two-sided impact this has on women's status, especially in places like India.
It's a fascinating duality. On the one hand, the manifest function of technology giving access to information has been a huge positive. It opens up access to education, especially for women in remote areas. It creates new ways to work from home.
There's a philosophical angle here, too.
There is. Donna Haraway suggested that technology can subvert old hierarchies. It gives women new platforms to organize, build communities, and challenge established power structures. And something as simple as contraceptive tech gives women more autonomy. It all looks like straightforward progress.
But it's not. The latent functions, the unintended consequences, can be incredibly damaging.
Absolutely. The same online anonymity that allows for free expression also enables horrific gender-based harassment and abuse. And we still see huge discrimination and underrepresentation of women within the tech industry itself.
I was really struck by the automation point. We think of automation hitting high-tech jobs, but it often disproportionately eliminates traditionally female-held roles like data entry.
It does. And Judy Watchman's work sums this up perfectly. Technology has this immense potential to reduce gender inequality, but if you deploy it inside existing patriarchal structures, it can just as easily reinforce those same inequalities in new, modern ways.
And that really is a perfect summary of why all this matters. Social transformation is never a simple straight line of progress.
Never. We've seen the whole scope today, from the high-level debates about whether sociology can even be a science, down to the micro tools that explain the pressure behind your clothing choices.
It's the systematic study of systemic change. We saw how industrialization broke apart the traditional family.
Only for technology to come along and create this whole new set of opportunities and dangers at the same time.
Which brings us to our final thought for you to chew on. We started with Weber, who said power comes from both economic class and social status, or prestige. Now, we know that many efforts to create equality, like land reform in India, often failed because the elites just used loopholes to keep their economic control.
And at the same time, we see this thing called neo-traditionalism, where something ancient like caste isn't erased by modern life. Instead, it gets repurposed for modern politics.
So, considering that constant tug-of-war between money and culture, here's the question. In the long run, which force do you think has more power to truly transform a rigid social structure like caste? Is it massive economic mobility that changes people's material lives? Or is it a slow, gradual shift in cultural acceptance that changes their fundamental social status?
A tough question. Something to think about until our next deep dive.